All right. Well, we're in Matthew chapter 5. You have your Bibles open to Matthew chapter 5. Really, we're beginning the new section, verses 17 through 20. But before we get into that, kind of just a couple of other interesting lessons as far as what we were discussing last Wednesday in regards to the citizen of the kingdom's purpose in this life. And he or she is to be what? According to verse 13 through 16.
Salt of the earth.
Salt of the earth and light of the world. And salt of the earth and light of the world. Jesus, what does he mean by that?
To be influential.
To be influential, yes, to be influential. We are called to be influential. Since we are citizens, at least those who are in Christ Jesus, are citizens of the kingdom, we have a purpose. All right, he's not going to put us in the kingdom and not give us any purpose at all. No, we have a purpose, and it's to be influential in society. He has placed us in the world, but we're not to be of the world. And so a lot of other interesting lessons I kind of want to pinpoint before we get into our next section of verses 17 through 20. But notice, number one, notice in verses 13 through 16 how many times Jesus uses the second person plural. You. Somebody go ahead and count it. How many times does Jesus say you? Three. All right. Now, what's interesting is that in the 8th Beatitude, verse 11 and 12, notice he also uses the second person plural form of you. So you can go ahead and add those, because what's interesting is that in verses 2 through 10, Jesus used the third person, meaning they or their. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And then from verses 11 through 16, he transitions into the second person plural, you. And in verses 17 through 20, he's still going to have the second person plural, you, in there, but he's also going to transition into the first singular, I. That's going to be important, and you'll see why. But, in just a few moments, but when you look at verses 13 through 16, as far as our influence and Jesus saying you, what does that tell you? No pun intended. Whose responsibility is it to be influential?
Mine.
Mine, yes. You.
Say yours.
Yes. You are to be salt of the earth. You are to be lights of the world. And then so guess what? If you are actually not being salt of the earth and not being light of the world, you have nobody else to blame but you. So Jesus holds you individually responsible. And in effect, Jesus declared that every Christian, let me repeat, every Christian is the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Okay? Now, some think that they have no influence at all. They insist that, well, no one pays attention to me. No one pays attention to what I do. Oh, yes, they do. Yeah. I don't think I need to really go into much detail or into depth with that statement, because obviously common sense obviously tells you that, oh, yes, people pay attention. If they pay attention to at least your problems or the bad things that you did, then what does that tell you? That tells you that they're paying attention. Now, sadly, we live in a world, in a society where, oh yeah, people will pay attention. They'll bring out the bad things that you've done, but how often do they normally praise you for the good things you do? Not as often. Not as often. Now, George W. Bailey once said this: the smallest hair casts a shadow. The tiniest pebble tossed in the water makes ripples. Even so, we all have influence. So it is our personal responsibility, okay? So if we are not being salts of the earth, if we are not being lights of the world, if others are not seeing the good works that we are doing to glorify Jesus Christ and to show him into the world and into the community, then you have nobody to blame but yourself. You can't blame the preacher. You can't blame the elders. You can't blame the deacons. You can't blame a church member. You can't blame your children. You can't blame your spouse. You have nobody to blame but you.
I noticed another passage where Jesus talked about salt.
The Sermon on the Plain, Luke's account.
No, it's at the end of Mark chapter 9. Verses 48 and 50.
Oh, yes. Salt is good. Yeah, salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, how will you make it salty again? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. I find it interesting how he connects this, verse 49, for everyone will be salted with fire. Huh. Interesting. What do you suppose Jesus is talking about when he says, for everyone will be salted with fire?
I think of cooking, but I'm not sure. When you're cooking a meal, you're going to put salt in it to flavor it. It's going to be heated.
It's going to be heated.
But I don't think that's necessarily the lesson.
Well, what's interesting is that when you go back to the Old Testament, you can find this especially in the first 8 chapters of Leviticus. It talks about all the different types of sacrifices. And what do they pour on the sacrifices? Yeah, they poured salt on the sacrifices. So, in a sense, I mean, when you're offering a sacrifice to God and God consumes it, I would say that God cooked it and he ate it. Yep. So, I guess in a way you could make a good analogy with the sense of cooking it. But that was a term that was very familiar with them at the time because they knew that when they offered the sacrifices, you had to pour salt on it. And so, here's the thing. Who are to be living sacrifices today? Christians. All right. So, we're to pour salt on what?
On the crackers we get.
On the crackers we get? Well, since we're called to be a living sacrifice, since we're called to be an influence of Jesus Christ into society, then we ourselves need to be salted. We need to make sure that our behavior, our speech, is seasoned with salt and grace, like Paul talks about in Colossians 4, verse 6. So again, I think that is in connection with our influence in a sense of to society, but that's a great, did you find that from your reading? Yeah, I figured, because I listened to your recent reading today that you posted, so I knew that you were in Mark's gospel.
Yeah.
So I figured that is what brought the attention to you when you mentioned about salt. But yes, so salt, we are to be personally responsible for having a Christ-like influence into society wherever we're at, whether we're at the marketplace, whether if we're driving down the road and somebody cuts us off, oh yes. Whether we're at work or at school, wherever we're at.
Don't throw pepper at them, throw salt.
Yeah, don't throw pepper at them, throw salt. Yes, I like that. And what's interesting, another lesson is that when we take personal responsibility of influencing society, we will have an effect on society. We will. Sometimes that effect is not seen immediately and right away like we want, but slowly but surely, later on down the road, when we continue on being influential in the lives of others, we will have an effect on society. Jesus' words in Matthew. Go ahead.
Can there be a opposite to that? We need to be influential, but what happens when you salt something too much? You ever taste it?
Yeah.
You go to the cafe and it's obvious that they poured the salt on it. And it's not very good. It's too salty.
McDonald's
Maybe
fries.
we also need to be temperate not overwhelming
Yeah.
at one time on people.
I think that's good. I think that goes into connection with being wise as serpents and innocent as doves.
Yeah.
And so I think applying that to our effect on other people, yeah, I think temperance is involved. If you salt something too much, that's an interesting point. I like that because it's true. I mean, if you eat food, if you salt food too much, it's funny that you say that because last week Angel was making this nice little, I can't pronounce the name, some Italian dish. But anyways, she had opened up the wrong side of the salt shaker. Yeah, because you have two sides. You got the holes, and then you got the open space one. Why that open space one's there, I have no clue. But anyways, she opened up the space one, and she didn't realize it, and then she just poured it all over the food. And I did the right thing, and I still ate the whole thing. Didn't complain about it. But she obviously realized the moment she took that first bite that it was way, way too salty. And I think that's an interesting thought to be able to apply when we're influencing others. You don't want to be overbearing, in a sense. Don't be overbearing, be temperate. But be salt, though, and be lights. And the effect that we have on society, I tell you what, as faithful Christians, when we are salting and lighting up the world around us, we can minimize moral and spiritual deterioration. And as lights, we can dispel spiritual darkness. Though we are in the minority, and though we may be persecuted, like Jesus talked about in verses 10 through 12, we are not helpless or powerless. Because where does our source all come from? From God, from the Word, from Jesus. Absolutely. That is where our source comes from. Because I always have a lot of people that kind of get confused, especially the youth and the teenagers. They'd say, well, how does Jesus tell us to be lights of the world when he himself said that he's the light of the world? Well, he's the light of the world. He's our source. And then so when we tap into that source, we ourselves become lights of the world. And so we're all connected. We're all connected to a source that gives us that power. So we're not helpless. We're not powerless at all when we are trying to influence and impact and have an effect on society.
Like the Transformers.
Just like the Transformers, exactly. Just like our theme for this year. Transformers, transforming society. That's right. Too often today, the line between Christians and non-Christians has become blurred. And let me give you a good illustration of what I mean by that. Everybody heard of the lizard called the chameleon? Oh, yeah. What does a chameleon do?
Blends in with color.
What's that? It blends in. Yes. Camouflages so that you can't see it or so that you can't notice it. I'd say that at times we have too many chameleon Christians that try to blend in with the world. Even though that we are in the world, Christ calls us to be what? Not of the world. Yes. Though we are in the world, Christ calls us to not be of the world. And yes, we got too many that are chameleon type Christians. They want to blend themselves in with the world, but you can't have it. And the thing is that you may get away with it. You may get away with it from the eyes of your brothers and sisters. You may be able to get away with it from the preacher, from the elders and whatnot. But guess what? Guess who you will never get away with it from? God. That's right.
So you will never influence anybody in the way that you should be if you just blend in.
That's right.
Sometimes you'll end up going the way that they are going rather than teaching them to go the way that we're supposed to.
That's right. And here's the thing, if you try to blend in with the world, but then yet some of those people in the world find out that you are actually a member at so-and-so Church of Christ, guess what that does to the credibility and the reputation of the church? Yeah, it hurts it. It hurts the cause of Christ. It hurts the reputation of the church, the credibility of it. And so we need, as we're going to be effectual in society, to give an effect on society for being salt and light, we need to have boldness. We need to have boldness. Even though that Jesus does not want us to be of the world, he is not saying that we need to isolate ourselves. He's not saying that we need to keep the light hidden. I mean, he says it like, who in the world would go in a house because in that time they only had one big room in the house. And that lamp was only one lamp that was on a little stand that lighted up the whole house. He says, who in the world would go in their house not being able to see in the dark because they have it hidden? Why would they hide their lamp knowing that they need to see? And so likewise, sometimes, we kind of confine ourselves. We confine our good works only within service to the church. And we don't want to do our good works outside of the church. And some kind of use cop-out answers or excuses that say, well, I'm just one of those types of people that likes to be behind the curtains. Okay, well, I understand. I get that. I appreciate that you are wanting to be behind the scenes because you don't want to make a big show out of it. Jesus talks about that in Matthew chapter 6, but that goes all behind the person's motive. If your motive is wanting to actually influence and impact society and to have people glorify Christ, then guess what? You will show your good works out there in public. And so I think at times we need to have boldness. We don't need to be confining our salt and our light activity to the services of the church building only. We need to be out there actively and people needing to see the good works that we are doing.
I think that you don't need to do good things just to get bragged on.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If you're doing it, to be bragged on, then Christ says to you, woe to you. Matthew chapter 6, he's going to talk about that. But that all goes down to your motive behind it. Yeah. Some people that are out there doing good works for people to see, wanting people to glorify Christ, who are we to judge saying, oh, they're just doing it just to be bragged upon and doing it just for show? Who are we to judge their hearts? We can't do that. Focus on yourself. Focus on your own heart. Why am I doing this good work? Why am I wanting people to see this good work out in public? Is it because I want to be bragged upon? Or is it because I want people to glorify Christ? If it's because you want people to glorify Christ, then your motive is pure, then I'd say let them see it. Shine it. Any thoughts on that? All right. So yes, we need to be temperate in our influence, but we also need to have boldness. All right? Don't be so timid and shy and so private to the point that people can't see your influence. They need to see your influence. They need to see your light and you being salt of the earth and to see your good works so they can glorify Christ. All right, I think I went enough on that little soapbox there, but next section, let's move on a little bit. Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. Let's go ahead and just read that text and get somebody to read it, and then we will discuss it.
Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth shall pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments, and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven.
All righty. Like I mentioned earlier, it's interesting how Jesus begins the Beatitudes by using the third person, they and theirs. And then from verses 11 to 16, he uses the second person plural, you. And he continues to use you from verses 17 through 48. But now in this section, though, verses 17 through 20, he's going to incorporate the singular, first singular, I. And so what we have here is that Jesus, verses 17 and 18, he's going to talk about his relationship with the law, the old law. And then verses 19 and 20, he's going to talk about our responsibility toward God's word. And so what does Jesus, what's his relationship with the law? Well, first off, one interesting thing that we're going to see in this segment of verses 17 through 48 is that we're going to see that this is not just a clutter of teachings that Jesus just, threw out there. All right? They all flow together nicely because the underlying theme is Jesus' relationship to the law of Moses. And so the examples that he's going to follow through from verses 21 through 48, he's going to bring out six examples of the principles that he's going to express. He's going to talk about murder, adultery, divorce, oaths and vows, vengeance, and enemies. All right. So Jesus' relationship with the law. What does he say in verse 17? He begins by saying what?
Not here to abolish it.
Not here to abolish it, but what? But to fulfill. All right. Greg, turn over to Ephesians chapter 2 and read verse 15.
Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace.
Oh, hold on a minute. Wait. Paul just say that Christ abolished the law of commandments? I thought Jesus just said right here in Matthew 5:17 that he's not coming to abolish it.
Well, once it was fulfilled, it was abolished.
Abolished in what sense?
That it was done, that's over. It's complete.
That it's complete, that it's done, that it's over?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you clarified that because here's what's interesting. This is what I like about getting into the Greek text is because Jesus used a different Greek word than what Paul used. They're both translated as abolish, but they're two different Greek words. The one that Paul uses in Ephesians 2:15 simply means to make inactive, to become inactive, to become inoperative, to simply retire. And folks, that's what Jesus did when he fulfilled the law. He retired it. And so the word that he uses here in 5:17 of Matthew for abolish is the different Greek word that simply means destroy. He says, I'm not coming here to destroy it, to annihilate it, to get rid of it completely. No, I came to fulfill it. And when he did fulfill it, he made it inactive. He made it go into retirement. Now, what's interesting is that he says the law and the prophets. The law and the prophets. Now, the two terms that were used here, the law and the prophets, is the two terms that the Jews would use in representing the Old Testament. In fact, they actually, at least in that time in the first century, they divided it into three sections. Now, today, if you were to get a chart that says the Old Testament, we have it divided into different sections. We have it divided as, the law, then we have poetry, then we have history, then we have the major prophets, then we have the minor prophets. So we divide it up into like 4 or 5 sections. They didn't. They had 3 sections: the law, the prophets, and the writings. The law, obviously, the first 5 books of Moses, and the prophets consisted of the major and minor prophets, also Judges, Joshua, Samuel, and 1st and 2nd Kings. And the third division that they referred to as the writings consisted of Psalms, Job, Proverbs, Ruth, Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, Lamentations, Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. There you have it. All 39 books. So in regard to this, Jesus says that he didn't come to abolish it, he didn't come to destroy it, but he came to fulfill it. Now, since he didn't come to destroy it, here's where a lot of people get confused. And sadly, even in our own brotherhood at times. Because he didn't destroy it, some people believe that he therefore is allowing the old law to still be enforced today. Oh yeah, Greg knows exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the problem. If the old law is still in force today, then that means all of us would need to become proselyte Jews. If the old law was still in force today, then that means that Jesus can't be our high priest because he's from the tribe of Judah. Hebrews chapter 7, verse 14. And under the old law, who was to be high priest? From what tribe? Levi. There you go.
From Aaron's
Yes.
descendants.
So, right then and there, the Hebrew writer says that you need to change the law. There needs to be a new law in order for Christ to be our high priest. Also, if the old law is still in force today, then who in here likes bacon? Well, guess what? You can't have it. Leviticus chapter 11, you can't have bacon if it's still in force today.
I'll have turkey.
Also, if it's still in force today, Exodus chapter 21, verse 17, kids who disobeyed their parents, what happens to them?
Got stoned.
They got stoned. Ooh, yep. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 19, if the old law was still in force today, then we cannot wear clothing with more than 2 types of thread. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 15 says that Jesus is the mediator of a new covenant. In chapter 8, verse 13, he says, and speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete. Galatians chapter 3, verse 24 and 25, the law, in context, the old law, was our tutor until Christ came. But now that the faith has come, we are no longer under the tutor. The faith, the definite article, is referring to the system of faith, the doctrine of teachings of Jesus Christ. And so, when Jesus fulfilled and accomplished everything of the old law, he put it into retirement. And guess what? There's no coming out of retirement with the old law. It's still there. He didn't destroy it. It's still there. And we can learn from it. Romans chapter 15, verse 4, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I went way ahead of my notes here. Okay. So he fulfilled it. And look at what he says in verse 18. It says that he also accomplished it. He says, for truly I say to you, until heaven or earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. All is accomplished. What is an iota and a dot? What do you mean by that?
There are little lines above letters.
That's right. See, the Hebrew letter, the smallest Hebrew letter, is known as a yod. That's how you pronounce it. Y-O-D, yod. When you translate it into the Greek word for it, it's iota, which in the Greek alphabet, the iota, I'd say it looks like the smallest Greek letter in the Greek alphabet. But the smallest Hebrew letter is called a yod. And the dot or the stroke is the little foot stroke at the end of the last letter. So when you put the two together, what is he saying?
You can't add anything to it or take anything away from it, no matter what the size is or what it's about or anything else. God's give us what we need, and that's it.
Exactly. In essence, he is saying from the smallest Hebrew letter to the smallest Hebrew grammar mark, all will be accomplished. And it has. That's been proven today. Throughout the last thousands of years, many skeptics have risen up. Many skeptics, atheists have passed away, and we don't even remember their names. But every one of them had tested and examined and challenged the authenticity and the accuracy of God's word. And all of them came up short. Because everything, from Genesis to Revelation, the Bible has over 750,000 words from Genesis to Revelation. And every single one of those words has been tested and examined and proven true. So Jesus, he kept his word. That's right. And he said that not even the smallest letter, not even the smallest grammatical mark, all will be accomplished. And he sure accomplished such. Now, moving on a little bit, let's get to at least, we got the last 2 minutes. And so I want to get to at least the application part of this is our responsibility then. So his relationship to the old law was that he did not destroy it, he fulfilled it, and he accomplished it. Now, our responsibility, verse 19 and 20, what does he tell us to do? Go ahead and read the text again out loud. Ashlyn, do you not mind?
Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you, that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven.
All right. So we have two responsibilities, one in verse 19, one in verse 20, in regards to the Word of God. Our first responsibility, he tells us what in verse 19?
To do it and teach.
To do it and teach, yes. Excellent. Yes, to do it and to teach, or to practice it and to teach. Now he says, whoever relaxes, what does that mean? Relaxes one of these commandments. What does he mean by that?
Bends it.
What's that?
Bend.
Bends it when you quit doing it? Anybody else? Relaxes.
King James says, whoever breaks one of these commandments.
Yeah. I figured somebody was going to say break, but guess what? That Greek word does not mean break. Because what he says is that if you go with that word break, then Jesus is saying that those who break the commandment can still make it to heaven. So what does Jesus mean when he says relaxes? Well, in Jesus' day, how many laws or commandments or rules under the old law did the rabbis record? What was it?
300 and something. Now, I don't know. Forgot.
613.
Woo!
613. 613 commandments in the Mosaic Law.
You can't do those.
What's that?
You can't do all those.
Exactly. That's the point. It's especially the whole point of saying, like, nobody can keep it perfectly. Only one person did, and that was Jesus. Nobody else. And so in Jesus' day, yes, the rabbis counted 613 commandments in the Mosaic Law. And so many of them made some of those commandments to be more important than others. They were ranking and relaxing the commandments, not emphasizing as much as the other commands. And Jesus brings us to their attention in chapter 23, verse 23. Somebody turn over to Matthew 23 and read verse 23.
Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others.
There you go. I think that last statement right there, these you ought to have done without neglecting the others. So Jesus, in the sense, was not condemning them for tithing cumin, tithing mint, or counting the seeds. No, he wasn't condemning them for that. He was condemning them because they were saying that is more important than justice, mercy, and what's the other one?
Faithfulness.
What's that?
Faithfulness.
Faithfulness. Yes. They were more concerned about counting the seeds, counting the mints, counting the cumins, than extending justice, mercy, and faithfulness. So though they would condemn those who would not go through the same process as they would. The counting of seeds are commandments that were to be done under there. But so was extending justice, faithfulness, and mercy. And so if you're to ask the scribe and Pharisee, hey, well, why didn't you do justice, faithfulness, and mercy? They may come up with an excuse and lie to you, but Jesus is implying that because you thought that counting all the seeds, having the right amounts, having the right amount of cumin and mint was more important. You're ranking that as greater, and justice, mercy, and faithfulness as being lesser. So our responsibility, in a sense, is not to pick and choose the biggies and the smallies. We are to do and teach all the commandments, whether great or small. Matthew chapter 11, verse 29 and 30 says that we are to take his yoke upon us. Learn from him, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. For in doing so, we will find rest for our souls. Let me ask you this. Have you ever come into contact, if I can phrase it this way, please allow me. But if you ever come into contact with one of your denominational friends and they would say, why are y'all so stingy on the pattern of worship, the pattern of salvation, women's roles, and etc.? Why don't y'all talk more about God's love and grace? Because that's more important. Anybody ever said that to you?
They say strict to me.
Strict?
Strict about it.
Yeah, why are you so strict about it? Yeah. Why don't you talk more about God's love and mercy and grace? Because that's more important. Well, here's how you should respond to such individuals. You say to them, I do focus on God's love and grace. In fact, I lean on God's love and grace because even though I cannot keep it perfectly, I make sure to do and teach all of God's commandments and not pick and choose which commandment is less or more important. Is that what Jesus is talking about here? Yes, that's what he's talking about in the context here. So make sure that we're doing all of God's commands. That's why I always encourage preachers that make sure that you preach all the counsel of God. All the counsel of God. Where do we find God's counsel? Right here. Be sure to preach all of it. Because I've known some that all they want is just the Bible basics every Sunday. The basics, the basics, the basics. Every Sunday, the basics, the basics. Well, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 1 and following. There, the Hebrew writer says that you need to be going beyond the elementary principles of Christ. You need to be going for the meat now. There's more to talk about than just the basics. And so be sure to preach all of the counsel of God. And there's so much that's in there, folks. So much commands in there that some are actually not even aware of. I mean, I preached on 1 Timothy chapter 5 one time. This was actually back when I was doing mission work on the reservation. 1 Timothy chapter 5 was about the conduct and the behavior of widows in the church. And it's actually in the present active imperative that when there is a widow in the church, those who are children of hers, who are Christians, they are present actively commanded to take care of their widowed parent. So what does that say about taking them into a nursing home? See, we don't talk about things like that because sometimes it weighs heavy on people. But guess what? What does that imply? If we, who are faithful Christians, have parents who are faithful Christians, one of them dies and the other spouse can't take care of him or herself, what are we to do? You have to take care of them. The command is for you to take care of them, not for staff members at a nursing home to take care of them or not take care of them. Now, does that come with burdens at times? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But would you rather obey the command of God than to disobey him? That's right. He didn't tell us it's going to be easy. And so anyways, I bring that point up because after that sermon I preached, I had one member that came to me and that said, I have been a Christian for 30 years and I never knew that. I never knew that was a present active command that I need to follow and obey. So, you see when you actually study the whole counsel of God and look at all of the commands that are in there, there's a lot in there that at times many of us are not even aware of.
Is he okay with like those exceptions when they're combative and you just can't?
There are exceptions that are when it comes to like beyond your control. If it is outside of your circumstances, then no, absolutely. That is when we know that our God, who's of all grace, will come in the picture and he understands our situation. Yes, but if it is in your control, then you have the responsibility to take care of them.
And that doesn't mean you're not taking care of them, because you can be in and out of wherever they're at and pay attention to what's going on around them
Mhm.
and check on them.
Mhm.
So,
They're not always taken care of.
I know,
Mm-mm.
trust me, I know.
Yep.
My mom was in one for a while. I was in and out of there so much, like, walking and doing that.
Did you ring the bell?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sometimes it's taken out of our control if there's more involved, like siblings
Mhm.
or whoever gets the
Power.
power of attorney.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
And we might want to do it, but they don't let us do it.
Yes. That's a good example of like something that's outside of our control. I didn't think about that, the power of attorney. But that is an example of outside of your control. Yes.
But that doesn't mean you just step back and don't try.
Oh no, you need to put forth that
Yeah.
effort. Oh yes, you need to fight against that.
Go
Yeah.
to that nursing home and do as much for that member of the family as you can.
Yes.
They welcome you into that place.
They do. Because I think they would appreciate more visitors and less visitors.
That's what Joe Shannon, Norma Joe,
Yeah.
that's what she was going through, you know,
With her
brothers
brother,
in their
yeah.
deaths. She would go in there, I mean, he was not being taken care of, but the others wanted him there.
Mhm.
But she was there almost 24/7,
Yeah.
cooking for him, doing everything,
That's awesome.
living in that
Yeah.
place with him almost.
Yep. So even if it gets out of your control where they end up in a nursing home, that doesn't mean that you can't do anything. You can still do stuff to be able to care for them. All right, but hey, good stuff. We are dismissed if there's not anything else. I appreciate everybody. Y'all have a good night and stay safe on the road.